I think most of my life I've been to some degree an interviewer. I've always taken a really deep interest in people, knowledge, information, education. So I really think that I've just been kind of applying the same tools that make a good student into podcasting. I've never formally gone through any kind of education.
This is Scratch Your Own Itch, the one show that delivers the conversations that we're afraid to share, but need to. This show is all about creating a life worth living. I'm Logan Tyler Nelson, and I'm your host. So, you're going to hear conversations with creators and entrepreneurs talk about what they do, their current and past traumas, how they became who they are, and what they are truly curious about. This is the show where we talk about the things we think about a lot, but need to talk about more. Please take note that this show is not a substitute for actually creating a life worth living, because this show will stir your beliefs, make you question what it means to create a life worth living. So my promise to you is to always give you one question to answer for yourself today to start turning your dreams into a reality. Hey, you. Yeah, just you. My curiosity question for you is, have you ever wanted to just start all over? All right, let me set the tone. You've been working tirelessly on trying to make the best art you can make by yourself. You've got this strong itch that requires creating. And when you're not creating, you feel like you're dying. Really, you do. So you keep on creating YouTube videos, writing blogs, or acting in plays for free, but you're not really seeing any real tangible dollars come in. Because all those successful people, look up to you, it said to you, hey, everyone has to pay their dues and do free work. But the truth is, you're fine with doing the free work. It's just that, unfortunately, doing free work doesn't pay the bills. So you find yourself getting a job you don't really love just to pay bills, and hopefully finding a flexible job so you can have the freedom and time to still pursue the creative endeavors. So my next curiosity question is, how much longer are you going to do that? Really? You know what you're meant to do. And that's to be a creator. Do something meaningful that scratches your own itch, that fills up your heart and inspires people around you. If this at all resonates with you and you're wondering how you can go from trash job to dream job, then this episode is for you. Because my guest today has scratched his own itch by turning his love for podcasting into a thing he no longer just does for free, but does it because he loves it. And now he gets paid to create for others too and help find their own voices. Congdon has truly cracked the code. But it wasn't easy, because Lewis and I are going to dive deep into his story of how he went from being broke and homeless to creating a thriving business through the internet. Lewis has 2 podcasts and runs a course, Podcaster's Secret Weapon, and he's played an enormous role in my own life and given me the premium truth juice that not only made me feel way less alone as a person in this podcasting world, but also the skills that someone should develop in their podcasting efforts. So, without further ado, I'd love for you to meet my sidekick, the one and only Lewis Congdon. Thank you so much for coming on Scratch Your Own Itch, Lewis.
Hey, thank you so much for having me here. Great introduction.
Thanks, man. Wow, yeah, dude, just doing research on you, I'm so happy I found you in your Facebook group on podcasting, because it's a very new world to me, and I've listened to podcasts for the last 5 to 6 years of my life, and I never really thought that I don't have anything to say really. Why would I make a podcast? I just want to listen to these people. And then all of a sudden I found myself being very curious of what it would be like to actually have a podcast. And I'm so happy that I started it. And I'm so happy that as I keep going into it and doing it, that I have a resource like the Facebook group that you've had, and also just the great resources that you give online, and the great information you give on every single interview I've ever listened to you, not just on podcasting, but your own life story. So I'd really like to get into that story about how you went from living on a couch to just well podcasting for money, I guess, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm more than happy to talk about that. Would you like me to just kind of start about talking about where I was sleeping on the couch and trying to figure that out, or where would you like me to start?
Yeah, if you want to pick any story that you think challenged you, that just required you to really change, and if that was the story that is about, I mean, you've gone through a lot, so pick that one story. I know that I lost a mom, and I know that you also lost a mom. So if you want to even talk about that, I wouldn't mind even talking about that at all.
You know, it's interesting. I've heard a fair amount of stories about people who were lost, struggling, trying to just kind of find some sort of purpose or something that just made them want to wake up. And podcasting has been something that, or a tool, a creative outlet that people have utilized to help them find some kind of meaning or purpose, something that helps them wake up and just feel inspired. And that really kind of is where my story begins, at least within this podcast, is I had gotten to a point where I had had a dream career. I had been in a relationship. I had been a dad. I had had a home. And then all of that fell apart. The relationship ended. The job was a contract position. So there was, a timestamp on how long I was going to do that job. So that ended. And so then I was living off unemployment. My relationship ended. I was kind of like a step parent. And so my relationship with the child that I was helping raise shifted dramatically. And so I went from really feeling like I had this kind of foundation, right? The relationship, the picket fence, and the job to what do I do with my life now? Like, what do I do if I don't know what's next? My dream had only taken me this far. And so I ended up sleeping on my friend's couch, feeling fairly depressed, feeling kind of aimless, applying for jobs that I didn't really want and felt like underutilized my skill set or my desire and passion. But I had to take some different jobs here and there. I just couldn't last with those jobs. I was not a good employee. I had a box like one holiday season. I was making tiny little boxes where and it's just on a factory line. So you're just building these tiny little boxes. You build like hundreds of them. Then they bring the boxes back out, and they are giving you a bunch of like makeup stuff, and you shove makeup in the little boxes. And that was my job for about a week, and then I ended up being fired because I was not. It's not a hard job, it's a factory line job. Like a monkey could basically do it, but I wasn't inspired. I wasn't passionate. And I'm somebody who has an education, has done a lot of stuff with his life. And for me, podcasting became this kind of outlet where, you know what, I don't have a lot to look forward to at this time in my life. I don't have a lot of things that are exciting me when I wake up. And somebody recommended podcasting. And so I started writing people that were really well known, people like Dr. Harville Hendricks, who'd been on Oprah record setting 19 times. A bunch of my heroes, I started writing them. And just the thought that I could spend some time with them on a call really excited me. I thought maybe that by spending time with them, I could find some sort of meaning and purpose back into my life, that I could maybe borrow some of that fire that they clearly had cultivated and had burning through them, and they were sharing with the world. And I thought it could be a way that I could give back as somebody who has an education, went to a private school, and studied like crazy to make his life better. I felt that maybe this could be the way that I could give back as well as get something back that I'd kind of lost. And sure enough, my first interview was with Dr. Harville Hendrix. Again, a guy who'd been on Oprah 19 times, New York Times bestselling author. And I felt so honored that somebody with that level of success would take the time to chat with little old me on his show that wasn't really existent yet. And when we did that interview afterwards, he invited me to come out to New York, offered to pay for the trip and the expenses. And that really began a shift inside of me where I began to see that podcasting could not only help me create a message to share with the world, but even potentially help me start a business and connect with the kinds of people that were doing the things that I wanted to do. And from there, my life really changed.
Hey, Logan Tyler Nelson here. Just wanted to ask you if you could share this episode, please. It's the best compliment you could ever pay. Whenever I hear something that makes me laugh, makes me feel like, heck, I'm not alone in this world. Or maybe it makes me feel like, gosh, I really feel wiser after listening to this episode. Well, I think the best compliment that you could pay to that person that created that for you is by sharing that with the world on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn, or any social network that you currently have, because it just does not take any money or even that much effort to share it out. Just to click that share button, and don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough. Wow. That is amazing. I'm like sitting here with a huge smile on my face going, he stepped into the shoes that he was meant to wear finally. And I it's funny that you talk about just like you got fired from a job because it was too easy. Like, I think so many people, I myself have been guilty of trying to find that job that just is easy. And when you start finding a job that just fills your heart up with intellectual curiosity, the reason why I named this show Scratch Your Own Itch, just being curious and playful about life again, is so it's the secret. And they're just, by helping other people too, what you were doing by just picking this man's brain, the doctor's brain, and then sharing it with people, because he's gonna get something from it as well as you know, people are gonna hear your story. And that's why I find this avenue of podcasting being extremely amazing. But I'd really like to ask you, where do you think that most podcasts for you, when you listen to them, where do you think like a podcast nowadays needs to stick out? Because it's just, I think it's becoming like the new YouTube. Like, there are so many podcasts nowadays.
You know, I hear people saying those statements, and it was interesting because right before we got on this call, I was thinking about that, where people are making these statements about podcasting being like kind of, I'm an Amazon bestseller, or I have a website, or I have a YouTube channel, or I'm posting on Facebook. It's kind of a thing that's really normal for people now, or it's becoming more normal, and more people are jumping on the bandwagon and noticing how easy it is to do it. And for me, looking back, if somebody had put down my vision and said, hey, you know, podcasting is kind of like that thing that everyone else is doing, and you need to do something, and you need to have a strategy, and you need to stick out and stand out. I understand that as a business person. I want to help people understand how to do those. But for me right now, just kind of what I'm thinking about and reflecting on that old me, what really excites me is that people can do it, that people can just get started, and they don't have to have everything figured out. And if they can, there are tons of resources out there to help them. But what excites me more is that people like myself in that time when I was first getting started can have access to something like a podcast, and they can utilize it to just go from sleeping on a friend's couch, sleeping in a park, sleeping in their car, because that's where I was at in my life, to just being really motivated and having trips paid for by people that you barely even know but are your heroes, or getting invited to join masterminds, or getting free programs from your heroes, or just having a 20-minute conversation with someone that inspires you. And now you have that connection with them where you might be able to email them if you have a quick question, or you might be able to read their social media posts or follow them on YouTube and make a comment, and they will personally respond to you. Now you have a connection. And that for me is more exciting than the nitty gritty of how can I teach you how to monetize your show? How can I teach you to get more downloads, how to get more excellent guests on your show, how to get sponsors, how to sell your programs and courses, all that stuff for me. Now, I'm left-handed. I don't know if it has something to do with the fact that I'm left-handed, but left-handed, right brain. I'm more into like the kind of the creativity and the like liberation of podcasting than into the whole business stuff. Again, we can talk about the business stuff. I'm excited about it. I really love that. But what I love more than anything else is that if somebody has experienced abuse in their life, or somebody has made some breakthrough in their business, or somebody wants to share some sort of message and syndicate it across the globe, they can get started, and there aren't going to be so much barriers for them to get started. It's not like running for politics where you maybe one person will get elected. You can be elected and you can share your message, and you can be the next story that people hear about because you have a passion and you're interested in sharing that message.
Wow. Yeah, I agree with that tenfold. It's 100% about the whole, like talking about the business is great. But like really, I mean, being able to just have someone have this trauma that happened to them, and for them to realize that their their challenge is ultimately their sort of like that's their strength, man. Like that's their strength. And excuse me, I really think and believe that the reason why I started writing my book is because of this podcast, and I would have never actually like had the sort of like bravery to just finally be like, yeah, I'm good enough to be a writer if it wasn't for this podcast. And I think it also taught me the story that I wanted to start telling myself was, hey, like you are worthy, dude, of talking to these people that like you right now to me like is a podcast star, because like you had your podcast like dude years ago before everyone else was getting the game, and that was when I started listening to the podcast. Was I think the first podcast I ever listened to you on was Superhuman, and I was listening to that guy's show, and every single time I listened to an interview with him I was like, man, where are these people, like where are they actually living, like these conversations are amazing and what they're giving, it's not like I get to create my own university now being a podcaster. I get to choose the professors that I want instead of some having a university choose them for me. So,
Mm.
hey man, I don't usually go off with tangents, but I just love that you're bringing me up. But anyways, I really want to ask you, because of this need though for helping others with creating podcasts, could you kind of talk about your process and what you would like? Let's say I'm new to podcasting. I've got I'm someone that really wants to start podcasting, but I don't know where to start because I don't have an idea for a show. But I have a following because I have some customers, of mine or whatever. But I just have never really thought about like what I should do to make a podcast. Like, what would be the first steps for you?
Yeah, if I was looking to start a podcast and it was something that I was interested in doing, or I was teaching somebody who was completely new and just came to me and said, "Hey, I want to start a podcast," I'd lay it out really simple for them. I would say, "All right, I want you to start using this program called Zoom. It's just zoom.us. It's free recording software. And I want you to use the headset that came with your phone. It has a little mic attached to it. Plug that into your computer and go on Zoom and start recording." I mean, that would be the simplest, right? Just record something. Zoom, you can also invite people. So you can invite someone that you really want to interview. It could be somebody within your immediate circle or somebody kind of slightly outside of your circle, and just reach out to somebody and ask them about doing an interview, and then get them on Zoom and do a recording with them. And I would really recommend it to be that simple. I think that when people get going into things, like if you're not a like full on, based on your question on where the person's at, that's what I would recommend. if you're like a full on business and you've already got your niche and your business and you've got clients and you've got a following and you've got an email list, then I would say start a podcast that's really relevant to the audience that you already have built in, something that would really interest and excite them, because this is one more way for you to provide value and content to your community.
That's awesome, man. See, that's why most people don't write a book. This is why most people don't like start a YouTube channel. This is why most people don't start a podcast, is because they don't think of the simplest thing. One of my favorite questions, quality question I asked myself was, is if this was stupid easy, and even if it looked like garbage for someone else, or looked garbage for yourself at least, but you know it was going to be beautiful for someone else to see, just start with the first stick figure. Start with the first, like, the first line, like Gretchen Rubin. I don't know if you've ever heard of her, but she talks
Yeah,
about,
we had her on the podcast.
yeah, dude, that's awesome. She just talks about like starting a one line blog where you just write one sentence, and it's just small investments.
That's right, exactly. Start simple as possible is it's usually the better way to go.
So what have you, now that you're, like, I've realized, you know, your podcast has changed from going from one time a week to 3 times a week to 5 times a week, to being from, 40 minutes an episode to now 12 minutes an episode. Where have you found your kind of like your sweet spot? Where do you like to kind of hang out? Like 5 times a week, and for how long typically are the episodes?
Yeah, definitely. We've changed the format as far as how long interviews are. And I think a chunk of that has to do with just when I first started, that these were people that had been studying for decades. So Dr. Harville Hendricks was somebody that had been studying for years, and I delved into his work for hours, endless hours, and utilized it when I sat with couples and counseled people, because that was a kind of what I had been doing at one point in my life when I was in a contract position. I was a counselor and marriage education and course facilitator for married couples. That's what that's what Dr. Harville talks about. So I utilized his work heavily for hours and hours for several years in a row. And those many of my guests, when I first started my first podcast, which was the Lasting Love Connection podcast, that was a relationship based show, and all the content that I was speaking about and the people that I was interviewing were people who helped me create a platform of information and content so that I could have really enriching and helpful dialogues with couples that I worked with. So naturally, I really felt compelled to have very long conversations with them, because not only were these heroes, these were truly mentors whose work I didn't just pick up and like read the book. I read the book, underlined it, wrote notes, took it to work, had the book at my desk, would come back to it after working with a couple, or before, or whatever it might be. I spent a lot of time with their work. And then as the business started to evolve and podcasting started to evolve for me, the podcast became not just a tool for me to have conversations, but and send and share that message out with the world. It started becoming a business tool where now these conversations are also leading to connections, are leading to listeners approaching me. And so I started getting a lot busier, right? When you're sleeping on your friend's couch, I have all day. I don't have like, that conversation, I'm hanging on to it for dear life. And it means a world to me. As the business evolved, that conversation is just one other piece of everything else that I need to do to have a healthy running business. So the conversations naturally started getting shorter. Then I wanted to create more content, not just blog content, not just podcast content. Then I started writing for magazines. Then I started a YouTube channel. I'm in my relationship doing all this with my partner, Kamala Chambers. And so now doing this business with her and having all these different ways that her and I are syndicating a message together changed my need to have long conversations, to how can I give a compact conversation with somebody that I really respect and admire and whose work has impacted me, share that with the world, but also do everything else that I need to do. And so the conversations became shorter. Then I started reading statistics that say the average podcast listener is tuning in for no more than 20 minutes a day. And generally noticing that people are listening to podcasts either in their car or on their phone and at certain times. which a lot of those times tend to be early in the morning, evening, and sometimes in the afternoon. So, what that says to me is they're probably listening to it on their commute to work, on their lunch break, or on their commute back home. And so that just made it kind of, for me, a smarter idea to have shorter dialogues because these interviews are going to be listened to in shorter chunks. So, hey, if I could have an interview with someone that's really amazing, introduce you to their work while you're commuting to work, and by the time you get to work, you've listened to the whole thing, got some great content. And if you want to go out and get more information, you come to our website or you can go visit that person's website. But now at least I've had a chance to make an impact. And so that's where the shift in length of episodes came. Now, on top of that, when we shifted to a 5 day a week podcast, that's just a lot of content. And so some days I'm interviewing 5 to 7 people in a day. And with everything that needs to go into producing a podcast, I did not want to spend 45 minutes interviewing somebody, knowing that also probably only 15, 20 minutes of that episode's probably going to be listened to, and then have to do everything else and have 5 to 7 hours of interviews. So there's multiple reasons why we went to a shorter format, but I have found that this shorter format can work just as well as a long format, especially when you're thinking about your business, listenership, and impact.
Are you someone who's trying to build your online presence and you're finding out that it takes some time, a lot of time? And someone might recommend, hey, you should write a book and become an expert in that area so you're known for that one thing. Well, a book, as I've gone through it and come to find, takes a long time. It takes about another 1.5 years. But that doesn't mean that you can't become known for your thing. I think the best way to do this is through starting a podcast and getting a website out there that can archive all the work and the content and the area of expertise that you want to be known for. Because you want to be the go-to guy when someone thinks of, hey, I want to get in really good shape, but heck, I don't know what it's going to take. And you know that your area of supremacy, as I dub it, is to get someone into really great shape. And what if you could bring on other influencers that already have a name for themselves online onto your own podcast to create content to rank in really well, to be the go-to guy when it comes to being the enthusiast that you wish you were online, to be the influencer that you wish you were online, to be known as the expert. If you look at what's been happening in the world, it's all going towards online. So if you're still running a business and overhead's high, please reach out. Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. And this is a service where it's a done-for-you podcast. We'll get you systematically hooked up to where you have a website, your podcast, and it really get you on the roll to where your job is just to come in and have the fun part, which is interviewing the experts that you wish you could align yourself with more, and to start actually making some noise and disrupt this whole idea that it takes another year to get really known for your area of expertise. So if this at all interests you, just email me, Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. Again, that's Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. And I think that podcasting is there's really no rules to it. So if like anyone that is deciding on, oh, I gotta be like this, maybe you can do both shows. Heck, why not? If you got the time, of course, to do it. Like maybe one show is your sort of heartfelt show that I know that you have. where it's your relationship show, and then your business show, which is a little bit shorter, and it's just like, packed with just value bombs left and right, instead of like the longer sort of deep vulnerable stuff, which I know I really care about more, but I know that some people just want to pop in, like, and get, just like, that's why every single YouTuber now is starting channels about these short summaries of books, because some people just want to pop in, get the nuggets of the book and pop out and then be on their way.
That's right.
So, but I really love that you listen. That's what I want to talk about next, is the art of listening. What is podcasting really like, being an interviewer now? How different has your mind now? Like, what way does your brain operate as being an interviewer, compared to not really being an interviewer and just kind of just going through life? Can you take me back to what it was like when you weren't an interviewer, and then take me through the transformation of what it's like to actually interview people?
I think most of my life I've been to some degree an interviewer. I've always taken a really deep interest in people, knowledge, information, education. So I really think that I've just been kind of applying the same tools that make a good student into podcasting. I've never formally gone through any kind of education on how to interview like a pro or anything like that. I've just applied all the same fundamentals that make a good listener, and I've applied those into the podcasting world.
Very cool. Very, very, very cool. So I'd like to enter what I call scratching the surface curiosity questions, where I'll ask you like a few deeper sort of questions to learn more about you and what you're doing in the world. And then I'll also ask you at the end, just sort of like, the only rule to these questions is it's the first thing that comes to
Got it.
mind, sort of rapid fire. Awesome. Cool. So the first question I like to ask is, what's a thought right now that keeps going through Lewis's head that he kind of wish he just didn't have anymore?
Mm, I don't have enough time.
Oh, man. You're not alone in that, man. Jeez. If you could sit down one person, any person living or dead, in front of you and become that person for an entire month, who would it be and why?
Pablo Neruda, and because he's one of the best poets I've ever read.
Oh, wow. I'll have to check that out. Awesome. I love poetry. Oh, God, I love poetry. Okay. And then the next question I like to ask is, wow, you're really like, you're good at this stuff, because usually people really take their time with this. Um, the next question I like to ask is, the 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 different beliefs that you have now, the story that you're telling yourself now versus 10 years ago, the stories that you were telling yourself. What kind of story are you telling yourself now?
I can create the life I want. I love the people in my life. I'm happy to have a family in my life. I can change these beliefs that don't work for me. Uh, there's help around.
Dude, that's what I call the evolving mindset. Like, that's awesome. See, like, that's one thing that I think podcasting can teach you, is that evolving mindset. Sort of like, yeah, as long as you just keep knowing that you're capable of change, the good change that you want to become will actually come into your life. Um, so that's awesome. In the last sort of deeper question I'd like to ask is, if you could just put one thing on a billboard for everybody to see, like your family, your loved ones, your friends, even people that honestly that maybe aren't the greatest of your friends, and they could just read this one message, what would it be?
You are loved.
Ah, dude, you're a deep man. Virtual high five for sure. All right. So here's just a few rapid fire questions. Just first thing that comes to mind. And the first one is, what's your favorite word?
Serendipity.
Oh, dude, that's my favorite word too. Oh, I just love the way it sounds. Dude, I love it. What's your least favorite word?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I have a word that I don't really like.
Oh man, you don't have one word that you don't like? All right, all right, all right, all right, all right. We'll move on, I guess. Or just maybe later email Mr. Lewis Congdon, and we'll get all his social plugs at the end. What his favorite word is? How about that?
That sounds good.
All right, and then the next question is, what's your least favorite sound?
When my partner says bye in an annoying voice.
Oh, that is there's a lot. There's a lot of subtext happening there. Yeah. What's your favorite sound?
My dog growling when we're playing tug of war.
Nice. And then I don't usually ask this question, but I love the way your mind operates and works. Um if you came to the end of life, and you wanted to just leave some kind of I guess sort of like departure with this world, what would you really, 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 really wish that every single person uh can tell themselves when they're in that dark space?
That they're loved, but that there's an answer.
Again, I love that, dude. Man, this has been great. I don't know how people can't love you. Honestly, dude, you're filling me up. I know that you work hard on Facebook and Twitter, and also a little bit of Instagram. Where can people find more of you? Because I didn't just make this podcast to be like, hey, this is my hero, and I'm not gonna ever actually talk to this person. I want people to become really friends with you and like friends with my guests and really reach out. And so wherever people can find you, please, shameless plug.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to learn more about the work that I'm up to or follow me on social media, any kind of way that you want to have a conversation or check in, all that can be found at thrivinglaunch.com. There's links to everything that you need there. And that is the home for all of my work and everything that we're up to here, thrivinglaunch.com.
Nice. Yeah, there's a lot of awesome resources in that. And then also the Facebook group too. Is that free to get into, or do you have to pay
It's
to get
free.
into that?
The Podcaster's Secret Weapon is a free group for anyone that wants to learn, start a podcast, or already has one.
What? It's free? Like how many things are free nowadays? Nothing. So thank you so much for being on Scratch Your Own Itch. And hey, if you heard anything that I said or that Lewis said, a quote that you want to Instagram, Facebook tweet about, just to sort of have that mindset that you need to take on in order to change your life and start scratching your own itch and create a life worth living. And if you have any more questions about podcasting, that Facebook group is a great resource. So thanks again, Lewis, for being on Scratch Your Own Itch, my man.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I look forward to connecting further. See you guys later.
All right, there's another episode of Scratch Your Own Itch. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to support the show by listening. The biggest compliment you could ever pay me is just by sharing this, because honestly, it doesn't take much, and it feels so good when people create something and take time. And when I see someone take time to create something that really just changed my day, either made me feel less alone, maybe put a smile on my face, made me laugh, made me feel wiser, I always want to share it with the world. Because why? When I share something that resonates with me, why not share it? I mean, that's just kind of the thing that goes around, and it's free. It takes no time at all other than just a click of the button, share on either Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, any of those social media platforms would be great to share this. So I really appreciate it. And I want to say that anybody who's looking to gain authority or expertise in their area and they don't want to take another year or year and a half to write a book and wait until that's published, I think the best way is right now is to start a podcast. So if you're at all interested in starting a podcast, if you meet the certain requirements, I would love to help you with a podcast and also get a website going for you as well. And this is not an easy task. It's hard to actually get it done and get it out there. So every now and then we need some help, and I'm here for you. So please reach me at Logan at LoganTylerNelson.com if you're interested at all. And don't ever forget, you matter and you're enough.